Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
So this is a concrete example. For those who are here the first time, I always begin my talk with some music. Do people have questions on topics that have been brought up in previous talks, or general Dharma questions, or who to vote for in the coming election?
I have sort of a general practice question. Yes, I get this numb feeling in my perineal area sometimes when I'm meditating, and I stand up, I get like a sharp pain at the tip of my penis. And I know if you speak to a urologist about it, they get a little strange. And they don't like to hear stories like that because you're actually pushing against a nerve network down in below your balls.
Right.
And sometimes, I've positioned myself different ways. I've sat high, I've sit bones. It doesn't happen all the time, and I can't narrow it. It doesn't seem like it's exact pressure going into my current perineal area. So I don't think I'm that's this little difficult problem here, and I'm wondering. I don't want to paralyze my I feel horrible, And I know people.
What a price to pay for the Dharma. What a price to pay for the Dharma.
I'm not going there yet.
Yeah. Right. How do you sit on a zafu?
Generally, lately I actually have back problems too, so I actually been sitting up high, usually on 2, 3, usually this high, and I'm on my sit bones. I'm sorry.
I didn't hear that last.
I'm on my sit bones. I'm on my bones.
Oh, okay. So you usually sit in a chair, or you sit
with a cushion? Sometimes on a bench, sometimes on a zafu. I vary.
Huh. Well, you might try standing. No, seriously. Sure. There were several people at the Providence Incident who stood. Now they did it because they had back problems, but it's relevant. So in a standing position, you would stand behind the area. This is a good posture, or this kind of. Now the only thing, like if you're standing for half an hour or 45 minutes, there can be stress in the legs, or particularly the feet, So it's possible to do a kind of slight rocking motion. Should your feet fall asleep, it's the equivalent of adjusting your leg a little bit if your leg falls asleep.
Sure.
But standing meditation is it's a perfectly good form. The only thing is, don't do this kind of thing. Do shoulder width apart, like that kind of thing. So that would be my suggestion. I've heard of that kind of problem more from people who are doing like a full lotus or a half lotus and sitting on a low cushion. So in your instance, combined with back problems, I would give standing meditation a try. Also make sure that if you're sitting that you have a good back support, in your situation. So let me know how that, if that is helpful. I'm not sure, do you practice with a group?
I vary.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Sun Sanim was very lax about positions of meditation, and he recommended, for example, that if people have back problems that they stand, or that kind of thing. So there's some meditation centers that are more strict than that, and so if you go to a center and that's their view, I would approach them, and tell them your situation and why you're doing what you're doing, and see if they can accommodate you. Most groups I've met are pretty relaxed.
Yeah, I have if I use a cushion sometimes I get the same thing as you do. I have made a piece of wood, where you're sitting on this little thing, and I've put my knees underneath, so I'm sitting up that way, and I have a cushion, of course, and I just push so much forward so everything is not pressured up, it's actually just using the back of my seat, and that helped me a lot, so I could probably recommend that.
Any other questions or comments? I'd like to talk about emptiness today. One of my favorite subjects. I've talked about it before. And I thought it would be good to return to that topic because it's so elusive, and so it's worthy of our attention. So it's a core idea or experience and understanding in the Buddhist tradition, like the understanding of emptiness. And that's true of all schools of Buddhism, like Theravada Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, Zen Buddhism. It doesn't matter. That understanding is a core realization of the Buddha's teaching. There are, however, over the centuries that Buddhism has flourished, there are many interpretations of that experience. Many ways of elucidating that very elusive and hard to pin down experience. So what I would like to do over the next few months is sort of discuss with you many of the different interpretations which Buddhism has come up with for this central experience. I call this facets of emptiness. So you have this core experience, but then there are many elucidations of it. It's interesting because some of the elucidations of emptiness seem to be mutually exclusive. So one of the things to explore is what are they seeing? So what are they perceiving in the nature of emptiness, so that they express it in a particular way, whereas another school sees something a little different and expresses it in yet another way. It's interesting about interpretation. If interpretation and experience, suppose no one in this room had ever eaten a banana, right? And so I passed out bananas to everybody, right? And so everybody had. Then I said, eat the banana, and I explained that you have to take the skin off first. And then I would ask everybody to write down their experience of the banana. So one person might compare, a banana to sugar. Another person might compare a banana to honey. Another person might compare it to applesauce. Another person might compare a banana to, thinking of the texture, they might compare a banana to something like peanut butter, etc. Another person might write a piece of music, me, for example. So gather all of these together, then present them to a deconstructionist. And say all of these are based on a common experience. See, and the deconstructionist would conclude that you are hopelessly retro and metaphysical. Just this is an appalling throwback to a primitive way of thinking. So it's possible. What I'm saying is it's possible to. For contradictory explanations to arise, even based on a common experience. So even something as mundane, as the experience of eating a banana. I think we all know this in our ordinary experience. It's like you go to a party, and then you have a wonderful time, and the next day you get a call from a friend that says, "Man, that party sucked. I couldn't believe it. I just had a terrible time." So it was the same event. Yeah, but a very, very different explanation of it, a report on the experience. One has to be cautious about this, though, because it's possible that the reports of experiences do refer to different things. The reason I bring this up is there's a tendency among some people to regard all reports of ineffable experiences to be the same thing. And so you can't take that for granted. Just because two experiences are ineffable doesn't mean that they're the same experience. So it's a matter of opening up to them and investigating them and being receptive to them and seeing, by interaction and becoming familiar with the tradition, what the meaning is. Does that make sense? Do people have questions? Yeah.
As it pertains to, because you're speaking about that because of its relevance to the different elucidations of emptiness.
Right.
So as it pertains to that, within a particular focus of Buddhism, say Tibetan Buddhism, if they explain emptiness in this one particular way, or one particular interpretation that they focus on, then is the assumption then that the people who have experienced emptiness through the Tibetan Buddhist discipline all experienced that particular experience, and then the other experiences that are possible were ignored, were not an experience that they had? Do you understand?
I'm not sure I do understand. Maybe I can illustrate by an example. In the Gelugpa school of Tibetan Buddhism, emptiness is understood as the negation of inherent existence. I'm sorry. And emptiness is understood as a pure negation. Okay? And nothing else. Okay? That's their emphasis. Okay? So that emptiness means the negation of inherent existence. Inherent existence means that something exists separately. Okay? So I'm condensing years of training here into a few statements, but that's their view, that's what emptiness means, that things lack inherent existence. Inherent existence means that things exist separately. Nothing exists separately. Everything exists interdependently. And so emptiness is what they call a pure negation. Pure negation is contrasted with ordinary negation. Ordinary negation implies the existence of something else. So if I say, the couch is not green, okay? I am implying that the couch is some other color. So that's called an affirming negation. Okay, affirming negation. Okay. The couch is not green, but it's not colorless, right? So we could investigate and find out what the color is. A non-affirming negation is when I make a negation, but I do not imply that something is there other than what I'm negating to find. So, for example, if I say the horns of a rabbit, okay, do not exist. Okay? I'm not saying that you'll find something else there. The first son of a sterile man, okay, does not exist. I'm not implying that there's something else there to find. So that's called a non-affirming negation. In the Gelug school of Buddhism, emptiness is understood as a non-affirming negation. That's what they mean by pure negation. There is nothing else there except that independent existence does not exist. Okay? So in the school of Tendai Buddhism, emptiness is understood as the presence of what they call Tathagata Garbha, or the womb of thusness. Okay? It's expressed in a very positive way. Okay? So that you, or you can look at it as the presence of everything and everything. Okay? So that, and they rarely use negative terminology to describe emptiness, even though emptiness itself is kind of a negative term. When they elucidate emptiness, they talk much more emphasizing what I would call a creative aspect, or a cornucopia aspect. Now, when you first encounter these two descriptions, they couldn't they seem to be like very, very remote from each other. So, I mean, the question is interesting. Do they refer to the same experience? In my opinion, they do. And one of the things I hope to go into is like why I think they do. So, is that helpful or confusing?
No, it's
okay.
Question. The ineffable states on the road to the ineffable state of emptiness, are they described?
In great detail. This is stage 5.7. They've had centuries to do this, in their monasteries, so they haven't missed one. Okay. So there is another tradition, incidentally, in which emptiness is central, other than Buddhism, and that's Taoism. And one of the things I am going to do is talk a little bit over the next few months also about how Taoism views emptiness. It's interesting historically when Buddhism entered China. The Chinese reacted to I'm talking about at the very beginning, like the first 200 to 300 years, the Chinese reacted to this importation of a foreign religion. They identified it as a form of Taoism. And that was their reaction to it. Now what's interesting about that is Chinese culture is very self-assured. And it views itself as the pinnacle of human achievement. And so it's difficult, historically it's been difficult for foreign ways of thinking to enter into the Chinese cultural sphere. But the way Buddhism accomplished that was that the Chinese decided and labeled it as a form of Taoism. When they first began translating Buddhist texts into Chinese, they used a lot of Taoist terminology to translate central Buddhist concepts. For example, in the early translations, the word Dharma was translated as Tao. Ultimately, that was changed. After about 500 or 600 years, Chinese Buddhists came up with their own vocabulary to describe these concepts, but it took that long, for Chinese Buddhists to distinguish themselves clearly from Taoism. But my intuition is that the Chinese were onto something, that it wasn't just a nice mistake. And one of the things that they recognized was this core similarity of the understanding of emptiness. So in the Tao Te Ching, there's a whole chapter devoted to emptiness, and in the Chuang Tzu, there's also many references to emptiness. In the Zen tradition, and I know there are a number of Zen practitioners in GBF, the way I comprehend how the Zen tradition developed was that it absorbed both these understandings, so that when the Zen tradition expresses emptiness, it's a synthesis, a creative synthesis of both streams of expression and both streams of experience. So I'll go into that more. Where does this experience of emptiness come from? I mean, how does it enter into the picture? And I think I consider emptiness the Buddhist response to what I call the question of eternity. And the question of eternity is: does anything exist eternally? Does anything or what does eternity mean? So you have this, this room does not exist eternally. It didn't used to be here, and one day it will pass away. I do not exist eternally. It's Jim Wilson. I had this, history. I was born, and one day I will pass away. there's this the Buddha, like when he decided to abandon his role as a prince and householder, it was a confrontation or an awareness of ephemerality, a confrontation with the eternal, which spurred him on this spiritual quest. It's like, what's the point of being, a prince when it makes no difference? It's meaningless. From the perspective of eternity, doesn't matter, right? And it's interesting that the question of eternity, when people would ask the Buddha about eternity, it was one of the questions that he wouldn't answer, whether something existed eternally. And he also, in his understanding of his own teaching as the middle way, he said one way of expressing it was neither eternalism nor nihilism, or neither eternalism nor annihilationism. What I think he was getting at, though, was that there is no thing which exists eternally. That there's no supreme being, for example, which exists eternally. And emptiness was one of his ways of expressing the nature of eternity without falling into the idea that there was some kind of substance or abiding nature which was always present in an unchanging and stable form. So that was the Buddhist response. The question of eternity is the core question for the spiritual quest. It's very, it's what, in a way, it's what unites all different forms of spirituality. Not that all people have the same experience of eternity, but all spiritual traditions have that, what I call that confrontation or that intimate relationship with eternity. Spiritual traditions are an attempt to answer that question. And not just spiritual traditions. There's science and mathematics, for example, are very attractive to quite a number of people, precisely because they offer an answer to that question. Mathematics, particularly in the West, has been very attractive to a group of people because the idea is that mathematical relationships, those don't change. Those endure. The Pythagorean theorem, it's going to be true, now, forever, world without end, right? So that's very attractive. You want to be part of that world, part of that realm. I was reading a book by a physicist, a contemporary physicist by the name of Schmolin, and he wrote about how when he was a young physics student, he was so excited about the fundamental particles of existence. It was just he was really jazzed. He couldn't wait to go to class and learn more about it and subatomic particles and this, that, and he had this belief that they were right on the edge of the final equation, in the final description. And what was interesting to me is he said he couldn't understand why other people weren't excited about it. Because you see, for him, what it was is it was an answer to him for that, what I call that question of eternity. What is there anything to this existence that is more substantial than my brief life, for example. I think that people in an unthinking kind of way respond to that question when they join ideological movements or things like that. It's often with this feeling in mind that I'm going to contribute to something bigger, or more important than my life, that sort of thing. So, but the moment you ask yourself about eternity, what does eternity mean? It gets really fuzzy. It's really very difficult to pin down. the opening verses of the Tao Te Ching, he says, the name that can be named is not the eternal name, right? The name that can be named is not the eternal name. And so the Tao Te Ching is a response to the presence of eternity. Although the opening line tells you that it's not something he can really express, nevertheless, he's offering you these clues or these directions to take. There was a Greek philosopher by the name of Heraclitus, and the opening of his book was, this nature which exists eternally is very difficult for people to understand, not only after it has been pointed out once, but even after it's been pointed out several times. Do you sense some frustration there? Once you sort of open your mind and heart to, to that question, what I call the question of eternity, you see it as a motivating impulse in many spiritual traditions. Now, there are a lot of different answers that people give. One of the answers that was very common in the Buddha's day was that there is some deity that exists eternally. That is a view that is still widely held. But the Buddha shifted his focus from the idea of an eternally existing deity, because he explicitly says that deities are subject to the laws of change, karma, ethical consequences, and depending on how they behave, they will die and be reborn in some other realm. So that is not where eternity lies. It's a very the Buddha did not deny the existence of deities, but he denied that is where the divine domain resides. By divine domain I mean where eternity exists.
Yeah, because when you get into this realm here, I find it a little vague. Because Buddhism to me always seems to be a place where I can get through my everyday life, And but the quest of reincarnation to me is an answer for the eternity. That something is going on, and I don't get the answer. What is that something? Christianity is called a soul or whatever.
Right.
In Buddhism, it's just kind of something. And then the word nirvana, what on earth is that too? Is that some kind of an eternal thing, or is that just a little limit or whatever is going on there? I find it very vague. I don't know if you can respond to that.
Let's see. Should I talk about nirvana or reincarnation? Well, I'm hoping. Right. I'm hoping that over the next few months, by exploring this topic, it might become a little clearer. But regarding reincarnation, once again, different Buddhist traditions have different interpretations. So. It may seem puzzling at first, but an important interpretation of reincarnation in Buddhism is that nothing gets reincarnated. There's nothing that gets reincarnated. Now, that's not as strange as it may at first appear. Think, for example, of a piece of music. Okay? It does some song, right? And then when the musicians come together and the singer is there, the music presents itself, and there it is. It's present in the world. It is alive. It is a being. Then the song is over and the song has ceased. Now let's say there's no one on earth singing this song. Where is it? Where is this song? Then after 10 years, somebody decides to do a nostalgia album. They pull out this song, and the musicians come together, and there's another singer, and they sing this song, and there's that song again. So, where was that song between its last performance? Where was that song during that 10 years? There was no essential nature that was carried over from one performance to the other. What caused it to be reborn was the proper conditions came together. The causes and conditions, and the song was reborn. So it's not really, if you think of those kinds of metaphors, it's not really inconsistent for Buddhists to say that there's nothing, which moves from life to life. What happens is that the causes and conditions that gave birth to somebody at one time now reappear. And so like a song, that is present, then it's not present, and then it's present again. It's also it's a nice metaphor because each time a song is performed, it's a little different. And so you have this evolving nature of the song, particularly if the song is in an improvisatory form, like jazz or something like that. Is that helpful at all? Or?
It's just because for me, the moment of reincarnation, Nirvana, comes into Buddhism, it's sort of an assumption because we still don't have that physical proof. It's like Buddhism tried to me, the way I see it, try to constantly hang on to what I can prove. I verbalize it or physically or whatever, just like very mathematical. But when we get outside that realm of reincarnation, we don't really know. We assume things. And that's where all the religion to me kind of hold hands, because they're all assuming things. This is our question every single day.
Yep.
Why am I here? The purpose and where am I going?
But you see, I'm not sure I understand what you just said, so I may not be speaking to your comment, but it's not true that mathematicians don't assume things. It's not true that scientists don't assume things. So I don't see that there's a big gap between religion and other forms of knowledge. For example, the axioms with which mathematicians begin their investigation into mathematical forms are intuited. They're not proven. That's why they're called axioms. Precisely because they're intuitive. And that's also true of all forms of scientific theory. If you move into a realm like history or archaeology, the inference from evidence to explanation is filled with assumptions. I'll give you just one example, because a friend of mine has done this. He's an archaeologist, and he went to Europe and he investigated archaeological finds from prehistoric Europe. And what he found is that every single time a skeleton was found with a dagger, it was labeled male, a male skeleton. Even if it was just a little finger bone. So he wrote a paper about how, that's an assumption. That's a kind of, cultural assumption that if there's a dagger with a skeleton, it has to be a male skeleton. We're thick with those kinds of assumptions, and I don't think religion is particularly exceptional to that. If I understand your point, though, is that when we meditate, eventually we reach a point in our practice where we experience emptiness. We experience emptiness, and then you no longer have to have that assumption, or you no longer have to assume that Buddhism knows what it's talking about. And so there is a movement from assumption to experience, and that requires trust. Now, I think what you're saying is that reincarnation is not based on that kind. You don't move to a point. Most of us do not move to a point where we experience reincarnation in the way that if people persistently practice it, they will have a glimpse of emptiness. Is that the distinction you're making?
Yeah, it's just because in Christianity it has a distinct belief that there is a paradise and a hell, especially in some parts parts of Christianity, not all of them, And that gives the people a certain comfort. And I think that's what religion is all about, is to give us a comfort to support our existence every single day. To say, there is a purpose for my existence right now, and whenever I choose a religion to support me in that. And Buddhism doesn't give that support in terms of what's happening when I close my eyes. Excuse me, close my eyes for the last time. What's going to happen with me, and that's what I think we're here for, to figure it all out.
Well, traditional Buddhism does provide those, those kinds of supports. The traditional Buddhist belief is that if you do good things in this life, you'll have a good rebirth. If you go to a Buddhist country, that's very widely believed. It's just us skeptical Westerners can't quite believe that.
No, of course. When you reach that point, it is an assumption of that rebirth concept.
Yeah. Well, maybe in a few months we'll have a talk on rebirth, reincarnation and rebirth, and how it works. Because, in fact, that would be a good idea. I'll put it on my docket, because one of the really interesting things that's happening to Buddhism in the West is the idea of reincarnation is being questioned. In order to be a Buddhist, do you have to believe in reincarnation? And there are some quite scholarly Westerners, like Stephen Batchelor, who have said, no, you do not have to believe in reincarnation in order to be a Buddhist. Now, traditional Buddhist teachers from traditional Buddhist countries find this appalling. They find it absolutely unimaginable. This is being brought up. But that's our situation, and it is being brought up. Let's have a discussion about that and see.
How would Tibetan Buddhists respond to your metaphor of a song in terms of when they find a reincarnated Lama? Would they explain? Would the explanation be similar, or is there something qualitatively different about how they would look at it?
No, they would use a different explanation. The explanation is that when there is a there is a mind ground or a mind stream. It is the mind stream which takes form in various lives. Somewhat like, let's see, what would be a metaphor? One metaphor I heard a Lama use, but it's like an electric current, which can, turn on a light or turn on a toaster, and it can give energy and life to various forms at various times.
So there is something.
Yeah, but they would deny that because as good Buddhists, there's no essence, no substance, and all is emptiness. So the reconciliation of those two is one I haven't quite figured out. So,
electric current doesn't count for something.
Well, they would say it's just a metaphor.
What I find hard to reconcile sometimes is the idea of reincarnation and the idea that everything is present right now. Past and future, this mental, instructions.
I'd like to hold off on questions about reincarnation until I'd like to devote an entire talk to that. But I agree. I've had the same questions.
Yes and no things.
Right.
You just have to hold two contradictory ideas in mind.
Right.
Yeah, but possibly bring back to root of the initial topic. I don't know. I puzzle a lot about emptiness and time. Only in that, if you say, okay, there is only emptiness, then that implies, at least in that level, that there is something. Because you can't have emptiness unless there is something to empty out. And no, truly.
I don't know. I think maybe also just in some response to this gentleman's question, even though we're not going to focus reincarnation today, I think that's part of what the Buddhist tradition does offer, is a sense of being comfortable with these types of paradoxes, because these paradoxes do exist, but they exist on a level that is the level of paradox. Time only exists because there is no time, and emptiness only exists because there is something on the level of that paradox. And then we really get to the question of what is it, that is emptiness in the sense of maybe a broader definition. Just
the Heart Sutra, the famous Heart Sutra, and that famous, justifiably famous sentence from the Heart Sutra: form does not differ from emptiness. Emptiness does not differ from form. Form means emptiness, and emptiness means form. So the non-dual understanding of form and emptiness is the ultimate truth. At a certain point, it seems like that they negate each other, but what I'm going to try to bring into the foreground as we explore this idea is that they are not mutually exclusive. It's not that emptiness is over there, and that form is over here. And to just return to what I was talking, to the question of eternity, I want to link it in with this topic. When people have been confronted with the question of eternity, the tendency has been to establish eternity somewhere else. And in Buddhist, in the early Indian commentarial tradition, they call this located nirvana. That other traditions have a located nirvana, so that there's a heaven or a realm, or from a philosophical perspective, there's some kind of substance beneath appearances, which is like an eternal substratum. In the West, Spinoza would be a very good spokesman for that point of view. But the Buddhist understanding of the eternal, as I understand it, is, first of all, the eternal means the always existing. Okay? But more than that, it means the always present. Okay? The eternal is that which is always present. Okay? And Buddhism combined those two notions. The contrast between Buddhism and some other traditions is that they agree that the eternal means the always existing, but they don't necessarily agree that it means the always present. See, it's not present; it's over there, somewhere else. So the always present means everywhere. Something that's always present, it means everywhere, in everything. Everything which exists. Clouds, mountains, cars, a tuna fish sandwich. And it exists everywhere, and every when, permeating time and space, without exception. Okay. I refer to this understanding as pansacralism. It's that there is a sacred presence throughout all of existence. And the Indian commentators refer to this as unlocated nirvana. Okay, unlocated nirvana. Or, we chanted at our retreat, we chanted the Shin Shin Ming. So at one point, Seng San says, not only here, not only there, truth is right before your very eyes. Not only here, not only there, truth is right before your very eyes. See? So, nirvana is not a matter of going to some location that has a gate that says nirvana. From this perspective, it is awakening to the presence of eternity. So the presence of eternity, you can look at it. This is a model. Don't take it too literally. That eternity is a quality of all existing things. This zafu is purple, okay, and it is qualified by the color purple. It is qualified by the shape round. Okay? And it is qualified by the presence of eternity. That is, there is a quality of eternity present in this zafu, present in you, present in me, present in my tuna fish sandwich. Part of Buddhist practice is being able to perceive that transcendental quality which exists in all existing things. That is always present. The difficulty is precisely that it's always present. That's what throws us. Because purple isn't always present, black isn't always present, loud isn't always present, soft isn't always present, pungent isn't always present. So it's a matter of being able to perceive the quality of eternity that permeates all of existence. And that's my understanding of why emptiness occupies such a central role in Buddhism, because it is the gateway to that perception and to that realization that eternity is always present. So, okay, Thomas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.